Alright, Top G. Introduce yourself. What's your name?
My name's Hayden Lowen. I'm from Benalla in Australia, country Victoria. 28 years old. I started my first business in 2021.
How many years has that been? 5 years?
Yeah, 5th year.
And that's led up to now, obviously, creating Tradie Force. And what is Tradie Force?
We are a marketing, coaching, and systems business, specifically working with HVAC companies in Australia.
So your background, how'd you get into this?
So when I was finishing up school in year 12, I knew that I wasn't going to go to university, and my dad was a sparky, so I wanted to get into the trade. I had friends doing building, plumbing, welding, a bunch of different things, and I was thinking about doing electrical like my old man. And at the time he said, you should do air conditioning. He said, I work with them blokes and I enjoy, their work a lot more than what I did. I think their work's better than mine. So I went down to one of the companies. It was called Ultimate Refrigeration and Air Conditioning in Benalla. It was the only company in town that did heating and cooling and refrigeration. I said, can I do a school-based apprenticeship here? I said, I want to do 1 day a week. And he said, okay. So I started doing 1 day a week for about 3-4 months towards the end of school. And then when I finished school, I went into air conditioning and did my apprenticeship.
At what point was it that you obviously started working for somebody else at first, yeah?
Yeah, so I had no goals or ambition to start a business. It wasn't a part of my dreams. My dad said you should work for yourself and things like that. So it was always kind of there, but I'd never really witnessed a successful business owner. So it wasn't very enticing. And I was also partying a lot at the age of 17, 18, 19. So that was kind of like my priority. So when I was working the first 2 years, I was living in Benalla and I was just partying, doing heavy drugs all during the week. Basically every single day I was taking some form of a drug. And I was doing my apprenticeship, and it was more so just to get a ticket behind my name. I didn't care about it, paid the bills, and it was always like, just get a ticket behind your name, get something behind your name, then you're safe, then you've got that there. And then after 2 years, I eventually lost my job for calling in sick too much, rocking up to work high, all of it compounded. So in that moment I was like, shit, what am I gonna do? There's no other company in town. And at the time I actually hadn't really spoke to my mum for about 9 years. Her and my dad broke up when I was 10. And from the age of 10 to 19, I can count on one hand how many times I've seen her. And towards probably the last 4 or 5 years, I didn't really see her, and I had a lot of hate towards her. And she was reaching out and trying to reconnect with me. And I was down in Melbourne for New Year's Eve, and I was actually out for breakfast with her when I received the message that I'd lost my job. And I don't know, it was a split decision in that moment. I said, maybe I should move to Melbourne. I said, can I move in with you? And she's like, yeah, sure. So I just said, I'm gonna move to Melbourne. I'm gonna find a job down here. That week, I drove down there, handed my resume into a bunch of companies, or maybe I even did it online and then got an interview, went in for the interview, got the job. It was twice the pay, got a car and everything like that, so it was amazing. So I went and did that and went into refrigeration, less air conditioning, more like commercial refrig. And I was still partying at the time, but it was more controlled than what it was back in Benalla. I was still going out in Melbourne and having fun and stuff like that, but it wasn't as dark as what I was doing. And I was still working, and still at this point, I didn't really have any goals. I was just kind of like, getting by. I wanted to make money. It was a desire, but I didn't really know how I was going to do it. I didn't even think about my future. It was just like I was present in the moment. And then coming into my last year of my apprenticeship, I started hanging out with different people that were a little bit successful, people that were in sales, and I got really, I was appealing to it. I'm like, this is cool. And I'm like, there's a whole nother world out there. I didn't know anything outside of my construction. That was all I knew. And I started becoming friends with these guys. One of them owned a sales company, door-to-door sales, and he kept drilling me saying, bro, you'd be really good at this. And I'm like, I don't know. He's like, come on. I said, righto. So as soon as I get qualified, I'll come and work for you. So as soon as I got qualified, the day I received my certificate, I called up and I quit. And I went into door-to-door sales, and I started doing that, and I absolutely loved it. It was so much fun coming from working with your hands to, getting paid to talk to people and having no cap on your income. So it was an amazing experience. And I started growing at that company, and I still didn't want to start a business at that point. I wanted to manage a big sales team and make money and stuff like that and travel the world. That was in 2019. And then as 2020 came, everything was going amazing. I was making great money, getting better, teaching people. And then COVID hit. I was like, shit, we're the first company to shut down because we're door to door. Our office was actually some of the first people to get COVID in all of Melbourne, some of the first recorded cases. And then for the first 3 months, I was jobless, just living off the money I'd saved up and just partying, having fun. And I was like, I need to get a job. A girl that I was friends with, she said, oh, I know someone who has this business selling luxury goods. You should go and work for them. So I was like, yeah. Went and chatted to him. He's like, yeah, absolutely. So I started doing that, selling luxury goods during COVID. And it was my first taste of doing something on my phone. It was the first time I worked without actually doing something physical. I was like, this is insane. I'm like, I'm going out for lunch. I'm working on my phone. And I became completely addicted to it. I'm like, this is really, really cool. What started happening is there was 4 founders at the company, and they would always go in for these meetings, these founder meetings. And I always felt like left out. And I always thought to myself, I can be at that. Why am I not at that table? I said, I've got better ideas than they do. I said, I've got better creativity than they do. And they're the ones who are making more money than me. They're doing less work than me, and they're making important decisions. And I'm sitting here working more, making less, making no decisions. And I hated it. And it started to drill into my insecurities. I didn't like it, but I kept just ticking by, and I didn't know what I was going to do. And towards the end of 2021, I'd met heaps of people in the business world, a lot of people in e-commerce, and I started to become obsessed with this concept of having a business. I'm like, I'm getting up to work every single day, and these people have a business, and they get to get up and do whatever they want. I'm going out on the weekend, waking up Monday, dreading it, while they're waking up and going for coffee with their friends. And I kind of reached this point where it felt like Melbourne had chewed me up, and I was like, you know what, I'm ready to leave this city. I'm going to move to Gold Coast. And I said, I'm going to start a business up there. And the first business I ever thought about starting was basically going to teach people breath work and train them on the beach. So it was kind of called Let's Get Fit GC. So I got these business cards made up and started this Instagram account. I was sending it to everyone saying, can you follow my page? And I was going to go to Gold Coast, and I was going to build this company, and I was going to, train people, do breath work, and I had this vision in my head. I was super excited. Anyway, moved up there. And at the time, I couldn't go to Gold Coast because I couldn't get a place, and I knew someone who was in Brisbane, so I went and stayed up with them. It was my old boss. He's like, you can come stay with me. And he had the door-to-door sales company, and they'd started back again because COVID was over. And I needed to make some money at the time. I wasn't working, and I couldn't start this business because it was in Gold Coast. So he's like, come back and do door-to-door sales. I'm like, yeah, whatever. So I went back and I started doing that, and I was absolutely dreading it. I was hating it, but I had to do it. And then I came up with this idea. I was like, you know what? I've got a cool e-commerce idea. I was like, I'll do these boxes with gradual tanning moisturizer, teeth whitening strips, and hydration face mask. And I'll sell it as something called Miami Palms. And it was like this bougie kind of e-commerce product. So I pitched the guy that I was living with, and I said, do you want to be the investor? And I said, I'll build it. And he's like, yeah, I'm keen. So I started building that out. I got all the branding done up, got some packages made up, some designs, some concepts, started to work through all of that. And at the time, then I purchased an e-commerce course. So I bought this e-commerce course and I started studying that. And then I was like, you know what, I'm going to build a drop shipping store at the same time. So I started building a kids drop shipping store, and I'm like, I'll try and do this. And I thought that was a sure thing. I'm like, I've got this e-commerce course, I'm studying it, I'm following it, and I've got this kids product. The store's amazing. I invested all this time and effort into it. And at the time, I also got a place down in Gold Coast, and I was able to move. So I'm like, yeah, I'll just move down to Gold Coast. And I had a bit of a falling out with the guy because I kind of left the work and stuff like that. So we ended up pulling the pin on that business that we had, the face moisturizer and the gradual tan. And then I just went all in on this kids product. I'm like, I'm just going to make it work. I'm going to 100% make it work. I'm going to run ads. And I was like, this is going to be it. This is going to be a great business. I'm going to have so much time and freedom. I can't wait. Funnily enough, it didn't work. Made a few sales. Didn't really know what I was doing. Wasn't profitable or anything like that. I'm like, I need to start working again. I said, I've got no money. So I was like, I'm going to go back into sales and do some sales. So I reached out online, had a look at some sales jobs, found one selling like printers on subscriptions and stuff like that, and started working for this print company. And that was cool. I was working with a great guy. It was a lot of fun. We're doing B2B sales, but I was still like, I needed to build a business. I was still doing a bunch of stuff on the side, trying to figure out what to do. I ended up meeting a guy who became like a bit of a business mentor. And we put together this concept once to do kids meals. It was like Muscle Chef, but for kids. We made these pre-made meals for kids. And I was like, this idea is insane. I was working at the time. I'm like, this is so much fun. Started building this business, got all the content, built the brand, did all this stuff and it was going crazy. We were like building an Instagram page for it, and we were making these kids meals on the weekend. I was working Saturday and Sunday in the kitchen preparing meals, and then Sunday I was delivering them to families, building this business. We went out, we raised $50,000, nearly raised $2 million, and I thought, I'm like, this is it. This is the business. It's going to make me so much money. I'm so excited. I was pushing that, and we went for like a year. It was a year straight of doing this, and it was a hustle, it was a grind. I learned so many lessons, and eventually it hit this point where we run out of money. It's a very capital intensive business. We weren't aware of that, but it doesn't really make money until you're doing about 10,000 meals per week, except we were super limited. We couldn't scale because we couldn't scale more meals because we needed better equipment, but we couldn't get better equipment because we didn't have enough capital. So it was just this nightmare. And then from there, I ended up doing a vitamin company. The guy that I was in business with, he's like, I've got this vitamin concept. I don't have time to work on it, but you can do it and you can take equity in it. I'm like, yeah, sweet. And it was like these personalized vitamins. So you go through and you choose exactly what vitamin you want, and it builds it into a capsule. So you've got that there, and it's like one capsule could have like 6 vitamins mixed into it. Another amazing concept. Hosted these events, these influencer events, done all this marketing, got all this content done, had absolutely no idea how to do business, how to run ads. So again, it just did not work. It was making no money. So all of that was happening. And during that period, I'd gone back to subcontracting in air conditioning because I was just like, I needed to make some money. I skipped a part actually. So I was working sales, and then I was building these businesses on the side, and then I ended up leaving the job that I was at, went with my co-worker to another company, and then we ended up leaving that. We went to another company which was selling like these crypto, I don't even know what it was. It was like a crypto investment where people could put their super into it. And we were selling that, working for this company, and it was like the most depressed I've ever been in my whole entire life. Like, we were working in this shitty office. All of the co-workers were the worst people I've ever worked with. They were like drug addicts. They were like overweight, annoying. Like, this place was miserable. The bosses were like absolutely ruthless. Like, they used to call you, like, they would just abuse the hell out of you. And I was there for 6 weeks, and this was at the end of 2022. No, so this was the end of 2021. The end of 2021, I was doing this, and it was absolutely dreadful, and I was absolutely hating it. And I eventually just quit and said, I can't do this anymore. So I went back into subcontracting, and I was like, I'm just going to do subcontracting air conditioning. I'm going to make a bit of money from doing this. So I was just bouncing around between companies for about 12 months while doing e-commerce stuff on the side, and that stuff never worked out. And a guy that I'd met through when I was doing the kids meal, he also had a pre-made meal company. So I met him, we got introduced, and we started to build a bit of a friendship. And he's like, hey, I know air conditioning is your background, and it's obviously what you're doing now. I'm thinking of buying an air conditioning company. Do you want to come on as a partner? And you can help run it and have equity in that. I said, yeah, of course. Like, at this point, you know, you're like 2-3 years into business, and you're just itching for any opportunity. You're hating what you do. You're like, I'll just do anything at this point. So we started looking at companies online, and everything was super overpriced. It was like $700,000 for just like a shitty little company. So we got together and said, I think we can do this a lot cheaper. I said, let's just start one. He's like, yeah, let's do it. And he was kind of pushing it back a little bit. He's like, oh, I'll do it. You know, let's do it in a few months. And this was at the end of 2022. And at the time, I went through a horrific breakup with a girl. I compromised my morals a lot. I was broke. It was the lowest point of my whole entire life. I had so many issues all hit me at one exact moment that came in, and I'd gone through this breakup over New Year's Eve, and it was the start of the year. It was like the 7th of January, 2023, and I was working for this company, and I woke up one morning and it was like 4 a.m. and I had to get up in that morning to drive like 3 hours to go work on this commercial job site, and my body was aching. I was like depressed from this breakup. I felt so shit about myself, and I was just like, in that moment, I'm like, I can't do this. So I just quit, and I was like, I'm just going to start this aircon business. I said to my business partner, I said, I'm going to go and knock on every single hotel door, and I'm going to say, I want to clean all your air conditioning systems. And I'm like, I guarantee we're going to find work. And he's like, so basically I quit. I went from the top of Gold Coast and I walked into every single hotel and I said, I want to clean all your air conditioning systems, $80 a unit. Did that, got a few from that, and started to clean these systems, started to make a little bit of money. From there, I started to get changeovers, changing split systems, doing all of that. Which was cool, you know, for the first time ever. I'm like, I'm finally working for myself. Everything I've ever dreamt of, I'm finally working for myself. And we started doing that, and it was around about 3 months of that, but it was still not going anywhere. It was up and down, it was quiet, it was busy. And I kind of got hit with a few shit things happened again. I had a watch stolen. I was still dealing with so many issues, and I was kind of still at a low. Even though the business was moving, it still wasn't going great. And there was actually this moment where I was on a roof working one day, and I remember just looking up and saying to myself, I'm like, what is going wrong? Why is this happening in my life? Why are so many bad things happening? Why do I keep failing? And I heard this voice in my head that said, you need to follow God. And it was something I've never ever heard in my whole entire life. I wasn't a Christian. I had no friends were Christian. I'd never been preached to. I hadn't gone to church outside of school where I didn't pay attention. And I was like, that's really weird. I was like, that's super strange. So I reached out to someone on Instagram that used to post Christian quotes, passages from the Bible. And I said, bro, I don't know what happened, but I heard this voice in my head that said, you need to follow God. And I said, I didn't really understand what it was. And he caught up with me and, started telling me about Christ and took me to church. And I kid you not, from that moment onwards, the business just started flourishing. We started doing advertising, we started marketing, we started moving into ducteds. All of a sudden, we're doing 1 ducted a week, 2 ducted a week, 3 ducteds a week, 4 ducteds a week. I bring it on a team, I hired an apprentice, hired another worker, and all of these amazing things. It's like all of my past just started to become a lot clearer. So it was an amazing moment that obviously there's hard work and obviously there's perseverance, but I think when you have faith in God, he can make your paths clear. And that's what the Bible says, and that's what I truly felt. And from around about May 2023 to December 2023, the company grew to $500,000 a month. We had a team of around about 14 people. We had admin, we had multiple installers, we had Sparkies and everything like that. And then January 2024, one day before it hit the year mark, we hired an operations manager. So the company was under full management, and it was probably the coolest experience of my life, because it was the first time ever that I truly had time freedom in my life. I could literally do whatever I wanted. I would get up in the morning, I would go train with my PT, I had a boxing coach in the afternoon, and the business was running and the business was making money and I was paying myself a salary. It was like my first time ever experiencing that. It was a phenomenal feeling. I fell in love with that. The next few months we started doing that, and anyway, I went to Bali in March. And then we hit the quiet period. We got absolutely slammed because we grew so fast during summer. Then we hit this period where all of a sudden it wasn't hot, wasn't cold. We had no organic work coming in. So I had to fly back from Bali, and it was just it was super stressful. And we were just trying to basically keep things afloat, because we had about $35,000 a week in overheads, or no, $30,000 a week in overheads. So we needed to be doing 10 ducteds a week, and we were doing 5, 6. So we were running at a loss for multiple weeks, but we ended up pushing through that, which was good. And we got through that. It started picking up again. We got back to the 8 to 10 ducteds mark, and I had fallen in love with Bali at the time. I said, Bali is such an amazing place. I was only there for 2 weeks, but it was so different to what I ever experienced. And I said, I really want to go back there. And I said, I think I'm going to go move over there. So I booked a one-way flight, got up, packed half my stuff, left half of it there, and I went over to Bali, and I was there for about 8 weeks. And it started causing a few issues between my business partner and I, because the company was still fresh. It wasn't in the green zone. It certainly needed to be tended to and cared to. And obviously I was doing things remotely, but at the same time, my business partner was working in there every single day. So he said, look, you don't want to come back to Australia. You want to travel the world. He's like, why don't I buy you out? So in that moment I said, yeah, absolutely. So he bought me out, and it was the coolest feeling. It was like, what the heck just happened? I just sold a company, and I said, I'm now living in Bali, and I'm like, I've got money and I have no responsibility. And it was super weird. I'm like, I'm going to go to Europe. I dreamt of traveling my whole entire life. I'd only ever been to Bali. I didn't think I was going to go to Europe that year. I ordered a Rolex, bought myself a green dial Rolex, booked business class flights to London, and I was off and I was out of there, and I went on a 2-month trip and traveling the world. And my best mate at the time was like, bro, we should start a marketing agency. And I was like, I don't know. I'd previously had a marketing agency when I was running the aircon company. I was also doing marketing on the side for other businesses who it was all organic people that heard about the growth that we had, and we'd done the business poorly. So I was like, look, I don't know. I'm not super keen on that. And he kept pushing me. He's like, come on, bro, let's do it. And I'm like, Anyway, as we're traveling, I'm like, whatever, let's do it. But I want to do it properly. I want to buy a course. I want to study the business model. So we did that. We studied it for a month. I was over in America. We had this mentor. We set everything up. We built the system. And I was in America, and I filmed an ad, and it was the first ad that I ever filmed. And it basically went something like this. It was like, tradies, are you sick of grinding day in, day out on the tools every single day, only to see your business stuck at the same year after year? Listen up. In the next 60 seconds, I'm going to explain to you exactly how I took my business from running on pure hustle to hitting $5,000 a month and scaling it and traveling the the world or something like that. And then I went through, told my story, run that as an ad, and it went crazy. In the first week, we signed 8 clients, and I was like, what the heck? I was like, this was really cool. People bought into our story, and then that's how Tradieforce started. From that moment, we started to scale it, and at the time, we were also doing Airbnb management, and we were kind of doing both side by side, and we'd scaled the marketing. We had around about 10 clients, and it was good. Everything was going well. And then up until Christmas, we were kind of doing both. We're doing Airbnb, we're doing this. During Christmas, I had this moment where I come across this pastor. He was Bill Johnson. He was a pastor out of a church in Redding, California. And I woke up one day and I felt God put on my heart saying, you need to go to this church. You need to go to this church. So I said, bro, I've got to go to this church. So I booked a one-way flight to America. I went to this church, and I was still building Tradieforce, and we're doing the Airbnb on the side. And I was at the church for a month. It was amazing. Had these incredible encounters with God, met some really cool people. And towards the end, I just started to get this burning desire on my heart to just go back and just grow the business. And I had someone give me a prophetic word on the side of the street. These 2 people drove past, and I was with a girl having a coffee, and they messaged her. They're like, oh, we've seen this guy all around. God's got a word that we want to pray over him. So they came over and they're like, oh, we just feel like you're going to go back and you're just going to grow a business and stuff. They didn't know who I was. And I'm like, this is crazy. So I got up and we went back, and I said to my mate, I said, let's just go all in on Tradieforce. I said, let's kill the Airbnb management business. Let's give this our absolute focus. And that's what we did. And across 3 months, we scaled from doing around about $30,000 a month all the way up to $300,000 a month. We had a team of 14. We had 3 salespeople, 2 appointment setters. We had 2 media buyers. We had a tradie success coach. We had a client coach. We had admin. We had a sales coach. And it was absolutely nuts. We signed 80 something clients, 85 clients over 3 months, working 14 hours a day. We flew back to Australia. We had an office, and it was so wild. We took on 10 different niches. And we hit this point where the business was making no money. We were dealing with issues every single day, putting out spot fires. We're working with industries that we had no idea about. We didn't even know how to service these industries. So it was around about June, July 2025, we said, bro, we got to do something different. So I said, let's just fire everyone, strip it back, only work with air conditioning businesses, work with 30 of them at a time, keep it very niche, and just focus on delivering an exceptional product. So we went and fired everyone in the company. Some people were amazing. It was sucked that we had to get rid of them, but it was just the nature of business. And we completely stripped everything back. We focused on re-signing as many clients as possible. The business was basically backwards in debt. And then over the next 3-4 months, we just rebuilt everything. We rebuilt our processes, our systems, our product, our fulfillment, everything like that. And for the rest of 2025, we really grew that out. We became obsessed with delivering good results. We became obsessed with the clients. How can we make their life easier? How can we get better results from them? What can we do to improve the product? And that is what we did, and we kept building that, and it became an amazing business where our clients were just our success rate was phenomenally high. Majority of our clients have been with us for over 12 months now. We have an incredible relationship with them. Their businesses are flourishing. They're hitting amazing numbers, and we were growing that. And around 2 months ago, we noticed that a lot of competition started popping up and stealing our business model because everyone was seeing what we're doing. And they're like, oh, I can do this too. We had people reaching out, pretending to be customers so they can understand our sales process, to learn the ins and outs of our company. Then they would start a business. Then they would message our clients saying that they can basically market for them. They were undercutting us. And we're like, what can we do to really separate ourselves? And I said a lot of people in this moment would crumble, and they would start to drop their prices and try to meet the market, and they would freak out. I said, no way. I said, I'm going to charge more. And I said, the only way I can charge more is I got to be better. I got to deliver better results. And I said, I got to do something super bold. So I said, let's build another air conditioning company publicly. Let's scale it to 100K in 4 weeks and then give the company away. We'll film the whole thing, give away as much value as possible. And that's what we've done over the last month. We've built that. We have fallen a little bit short. We're not quite at the 100K mark yet. We will get there, but I haven't given it that much focus. As I've said before, in the 3rd week, I did this EMDR therapy to help with some childhood issues. After that, it was so hard to get back into it because I've just been focusing on Tradieforce, but we're still sitting around about $83,000. The Instagram page has 50 something posts. We have 2 video testimonials, multiple videos. So I'm very happy with how it's gone. And now we're ready to absolutely level up our product. We're ready to make our clients have the most insane product where they simply can just print work on demand without having to do absolutely anything. And that's where we are.